All right, finally back into Cinema 4D. So I'm importing my Alembic here, and because I don't have any animation, we're going to leave the frame rate alone. I don't really care about that at the moment. But what I do want to make sure I do is make sure that curves come in as splines only, and that I check on face sets and color maps, because if I don't, I'm not going to get any of my vertex maps. So I'm going to hit OK. We're going to import all these things. So you can see that path attribute that I set up, all of those things that had a different path attribute name, they all came in as separate objects, which is great. So I've got my poly 1, poly 2, I've got my internal structure, I've got my flying poly lines, extruded polys, and my cubby holes. So I have all of these things. I also have all of my groups. So I've got my normals, I've got my UVs, which is standard, but I also have all these groups. Remember, I've got my bevel prims, I've got my extrude fronts, I've got my extrude side, and I've got my random polys that I set up as a group as well. So I've got all those groups. I also have my CD attribute, which you can see here. And I've got this this little random var attribute, this little float attribute that I set up on all the points. Like I said, we're not going to use it, but I wanted to demonstrate that you can actually get a float attribute out here as well, and this is what that ends up looking like. So the first thing I want to do is just get some materials set up in here. Add this old material in here. We don't need that. I'm not going to make this about a great deal of material building. There's tons of resources out there for that. So I'm going to use fairly simple materials for this, but we will build a couple of things here. So let's go ahead and drop in a new material. This one, I'm just going to use the iron preset for the moment. And I'm just going to drop that onto all of my polys, just so I have something on all of these shapes here. I'm going to duplicate that. We are going to set this one up as maybe silver. And I'm going to drop that on these as well, but I'm going to use the bevel prims group just so that the bevels have a little bit of a kind of extra shiny edge to them. And we don't have bevel prims for these guys, but that's okay. We're just going to leave those alone for the moment. Cool. Let's go ahead and drop in a camera just so we have something in the viewport that we can actually manipulate. There we go. And I'm just going to leave that camera alone for the moment. We're going to turn that off. And then let's get a couple lights in here as well. Let's make a couple area lights. Let's make this a little bit bigger and let's flip it around so we get kind of a nice sort of rim light from this one. Let's then push this back. Let's reduce that intensity. It's a little much at the moment. That's cool. And let's look through our camera. Let's go ahead and bring up our redshift render view. Great. Okay, so that's giving me some nice rim light. I do want a little bit more of a general light as well, so I'm just going to push this off to the side. I'm going to come up here to the area light. We're going to duplicate it. Just going to zero the rotation out. Let's go ahead and take this. We're going to make this sort of a top-down, just sort of a very broad, soft kind of light. Right from the top. Like this. Cool. Let's go ahead and look through our camera. Yeah, that's nice. That'll give us a nice kind of top-down sort of look. Now, I do want to get some of those internal structures going next. So let's go ahead and get those rendering. Some of these guys. I'm going to take all of my splines and move them up to the top so I can kind of treat them separately. Let's work on the internals first. Let's go ahead and grab a redshift object tag, and we're going to set the curve mode to cylinders. And let's reduce the width on that. Let's say 0.25. And I'm going to create just a redshift incandescent material. I'm going to throw that on here for the moment. And let's set that to a different color. Let's use like a blue color for that for the moment. And I do want to get the flying lines in there as well. So I'm going to get those rendering. Maybe those will be a little thicker, like 0.5. And let's give those just the regular metal material. All right, let's see what we get. Cool, so now I'm starting to see some internal structure. That makes me happy. That's going to look pretty cool. Let's adjust that a little bit. Let's look at that again. Let's go to our object tag here. And what I want to do, let's get rid of this. I want to have these be a little bit more exaggerated over the length of the splines. I'm just going to do this kind of thing. And let's get a little bit more intensity on the incandescence. Say 5. Try that. Yeah, that's nice. It'll work pretty well. So now they feel a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more eye-catching in a way. So let's go ahead and add some more light-emitting elements. Let's go ahead and make another incandescent color. And let's make this one something contrasting, something kind of in the orange realm. And let's look at our extruded polys here. I'm going to turn off the visibility on everything else. Let's just look at these extruded polys. I'm going to drop this on here. And let's use one of these groups. Let's use... let's try this one. Let's see what that does for us. And we'll bring up our render view so we can see what we're doing. All right, that's pretty cool. Kind of digging that. That's kind of a fun, like little edge light to that. That's cool. Let's see what that looks like with everything else turned on. Refresh that, make sure that we get the latest. All right, yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm kind of digging that idea. Let's see what that looks like if we use the other group as well. Yeah, that's super cool. So I'm gonna go with that. I actually really like this color contrast. So what I want to do is drop in some other elements that are going to also be incandescent, that maybe break the busyness of this up a little bit and add some more kind of constant visual elements in here. So for that, I think I'm going to use a cube. Let's go ahead and turn all this off. Let's just make this cube editable. I'm going to remove the top and the bottom. We're just going to get rid of those. And let's go ahead and shrink this guy down a bit. Maybe make it a little larger. Let's turn everything else back on. I'm going to give this the same sort of yellow incandescent material here. And we're going to maybe shrink this down a little bit. Maybe make it a little thinner. What I'm looking for is something that will contrast the busyness of everything else with something very simple and clean in the scene, so that I can have some nice shape contrast as well as some color contrast. Let's go ahead and bring back in our Redshift render view and see what that's doing. Yeah, that's pretty fun. Digging that. Maybe what we do is do a couple of them. Like, let's bring this in just a little bit smaller. Like that. Maybe we duplicate it so we get another one. It's like right up above it. We get a couple of those little things. Maybe we'll make them a little shorter. They take up a lot of visual real estate at the moment. Yeah, something like that. And then maybe we need something, kind of need something at the bottom too. Let's scooch these a little closer. Let's go ahead and duplicate this, and we'll bring one down towards the bottom. This one, maybe what we do is make this a little bit larger. We let this be a little larger, but maybe, I mean, it might be kind of cool to have that intersecting our geometry. Yeah. Yeah, I like I like what that's doing with the color contrast there. We've got the yellow, we've got the blue, and we have a nice shape contrast as well. We have these big, broad, simple lines contrasted against all of our very busy, detailed geometry that we've got from Houdini. All right, so our next step would be to maybe branch out our material development a little bit and use some of the groups and attributes that we've brought in just to expand things out. So let's duplicate our iron material, and I'm going to put this specific iron material on a couple of these objects that have this random attribute that I generated. So let's go ahead and jump into our shader development, and we need a vertex attribute, and let's go ahead and grab this, which is CD, right? So that should look pretty familiar coming from Houdini. And we're going to take this, we're going to put this into, let's say, reflection color. We're going to let this drive reflection color. Let's bring our viewport over here again. And so now we can see we have some darker ones, we have some lighter ones. Let's also, let's maybe instead of reflection color, let's let this drive diffuse color. Now, by default, the iron material doesn't have any diffuse weight, so we got to turn up the diffuse weight a little bit. Let's go up like 50%. Now we're starting to get some different color. Let's just reduce that down just a little bit. That might be a little heavy. Yeah, that's feeling a little better. All right, cool. The other thing we could do is apply a completely different material. So if I take, let's say I take this iron material, I duplicate this, and let's do, instead of an iron material, let's do a glass material. So just a simple glass. And we're going to change the roughness on that glass. So we're going to come up here, we're going to add a little bit of roughness to that. And we're going to drop that onto a couple of these polys. And we're going to use this random poly group. So right now, of course, it's overriding everything. I don't want it to do that. I want it to only apply to the random poly group that I have, so that I have some glassy panels and I have some not glassy panels. That's pretty cool. So I'm starting to see through some of those shapes, and I can come in here and make some adjustments as to, you know, just how rough I want that and how reflective and refractive I want that as well. So maybe we reduce that down a little bit, give that a refresh, let it think about what it's doing. And we can actually use some of those things even together. So if we open up this glass graph again, we go to a vertex attribute, and let's say we bring in our CD vertex attribute here. We could even use that to drive our reflection weight or our reflection roughness or something like that, and even vary that up more. So as we let that render, we can add even more variation into that. That's cool. Let's maybe back off on the roughness just a bit. Yeah, that feels better. Great. And of course, you can dial this to taste. This is me just playing at the moment. And you can take this and include only what you want. Like maybe we only have some of these polys have the glass material. Like maybe we've gone a little too far with the glass. It's really just experimentation at this point. So after taking the final render out of Cinema 4D and bringing it into After Effects, giving it some color correct, a little bit of glow here and there, and some color washes, this is where I've ended up. Thank you so much for joining me for this Intro to Houdini course through Grayscale Gorilla. My name is Russ Gauthier. Please follow me on Twitter at robotastronaut_. Check out my website, robotastronaut.tv. Let me know what you're able to come up with. I would love to see what you are all able to make in Houdini. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy Houdiniing.